Ethan Miller never imagined the woman pouring his morning coffee would one day hold the power to rewrite his life. She wasn't dressed in diamonds or luxury, just a faded apron, a tired smile, and eyes that seemed to hide 1,000 unspoken truths. But sometimes the people who appear most ordinary carry the most extraordinary secrets, ones that can change everything you thought you knew about love, forgiveness, and second chances. The bell above the cafe door jingled as Ethan stepped inside, shaking the cold Boston air from his coat. He was late again, not for work, but for himself. Between 2 jobs and caring for his 6-year-old daughter, Lucy, he had learned to measure his days in exhaustion and instant coffee. The cafe, Willow's Corner, was his tiny ritual, a brief moment of warmth in his endless routine. Behind the counter, Lena Brooks moved with quiet grace. Her auburn hair was tied back, and though her smile was polite, her eyes seemed somewhere else, distant, guarded. She noticed Ethan right away, not because he stood out, but because he carried a softness she rarely saw. He thanked her every time she refilled his cup, and he always left a tip, even when he could barely afford his own coffee. "Rough morning again?" Lena asked softly, sliding his cup toward him. He chuckled tiredly. "Aren't they all?" Something in that moment, the shared fatigue, the hint of kindness, built an invisible bridge between them. Ethan didn't know her story, but he could feel she understood struggle. And Lena, though she tried not to, found herself wondering about the little girl's crayon marks on his hands and the sadness he hid behind his smile. Weeks passed, and Ethan became a familiar face, always at the same booth by the window, sketching building designs on napkins. Lena learned he had once been an architect before the company layoffs. Now he worked construction by day and delivered groceries at night. His dream was to save enough to finish his architecture license and give Lucy the life she deserved. "Don't you ever rest?" Lena asked one morning, half joking as she brought him a muffin. He smiled, weary but grateful. "Rest is for people who aren't chasing survival." That line stayed with her all day. She knew what it meant to chase survival. She'd been doing it her whole life. But unlike Ethan, her chase wasn't for money. It was for freedom. Freedom from the secret that kept her chained to a past she could never explain. That night, as she closed the cafe alone, Lena pulled out her phone. A name flashed across the screen. Charles Brooks. She hesitated, then silenced the call. She couldn't talk to him. Not yet. Not until she figured out how to tell Ethan the truth, that she wasn't just a waitress. She was the daughter of the man who once destroyed Ethan's career. Ethan noticed Lena's distraction the next morning. She spilled coffee twice and avoided his gaze. He tried to lighten the mood, but her laughter didn't reach her eyes. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. She nodded too quickly. "Just tired, that's all." Lucy ran up to the counter, holding her father's hand. "Miss Lena, Daddy says you make the best muffins." Lena knelt down, her heart softening instantly. "Well, that means you get the next one for free." She winked, handing Lucy a small blueberry muffin. Ethan smiled, the kind that made his eyes glow with gratitude. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she replied, and for a brief second her mask slipped. Ethan saw it, the loneliness behind her kindness. It was the same look he saw in the mirror. That evening, Lena sat in her small apartment staring at a letter on the table. The letter bore her father's law firm logo, Brooks and Tate, Legal Associates. Inside was a check, an allowance she hadn't cashed in months. She hated taking his money, hated the guilt that came with every dollar. Her father, Charles Brooks, was a name Ethan Miller would never forget. Years ago, Charles's firm represented the corporation that fired Ethan during a wrongful layoff dispute. Ethan had lost everything: his job, his home, his marriage. Charles Brooks had walked away with a fat bonus. And now, his daughter was falling for the man her father had ruined. Lena felt sick with shame. She wanted to tell Ethan, but how? Would he ever look at her the same way again? The thought of losing the one person who treated her like more than a shadow terrified her. Snow blanketed Boston that December morning. Ethan's construction site was shut down due to the storm, leaving him without pay for the week. He sat in the cafe, staring at the bills piling in his worn leather wallet. Lena brought him a cup of hot chocolate instead of coffee. "You look like you could use something sweeter today." He chuckled weakly. "Can't argue with that." For the first time, she sat down across from him. "Ethan, have you ever thought about letting someone help you?" He looked up, confused. "Help me? You mean charity?" "No," she said quickly. "I mean, a friend." The word friend hit him harder than he expected. He hadn't had one in years. And in that moment, with the world outside frozen and silent, Ethan realized how much he needed someone, not to fix him, but to remind him he wasn't alone. Lena's secret grew heavier by the day. Every time she smiled at Ethan or played with Lucy, she felt like an imposter in her own skin. Then one evening, after the cafe closed, a man in a tailored suit walked in. "Lena," he said sternly, "your father's been calling nonstop." Ethan, who was picking up his forgotten wallet, froze at the doorway. "Dad doesn't get to dictate my life anymore," Lena snapped, her voice shaking. The man sighed. "You're throwing your future away over some construction worker?" Ethan's chest tightened. Construction worker. The word cut deep. Lena turned toward Ethan, eyes wide with panic. But before she could explain, he was already gone. The bell over the door ringing like a goodbye she could not stop. For days, Ethan avoided the cafe. He told himself it didn't matter, that he should be known someone like her would not understand his world. But at night, when Lucy asked why Miss Lena wasn't around anymore, his chest ached in silence. Lena, meanwhile, couldn't sleep. She left him a note, no excuses, just, "Please let me explain." But he never came. Finally, she decided she couldn't hide anymore. She went to his apartment, trembling. When he opened the door, his eyes were cold. "My father," she began. "He's the reason you lost your job at Weston and Pierce. I didn't know when we met, I swear, I just—" He cut her off, voice low. "You should have told me, Lena. I trusted you." Her eyes filled with tears. "And I love you, Ethan. That's the truth I was too scared to say." Ethan shut the door gently, not in anger, but in heartbreak. He couldn't hate her, but he couldn't face her either. The betrayal reopened every wound he'd buried. For a week, he went through the motions, work, bills, bedtime stories, but nothing felt the same. Lucy noticed. "Daddy, did you make Miss Lena sad?" Her innocent question shattered him. Maybe Lena hadn't meant to hurt him. Maybe she was just caught between love and loyalty. That night, Ethan opened her note again. Her words were raw, trembling, human. "I never wanted to be my father's daughter. I just wanted to be someone you could believe in." He folded the letter and whispered, "Maybe you still can be." Meanwhile, Lena's father showed up at her apartment. "I warned you, Lena. That man will ruin you." She faced him, trembling but firm. "No, Dad. You ruined him. You ruined people who trusted you, and I'm done living under your name." Charles stared at her, not used to being defied. "You're walking away from everything I built." "No," she said quietly. "I'm walking toward something real." She packed her things that night, leaving behind the luxury and lies that once defined her. A month later, Ethan got a letter in the mail, not from Lena, but from a law firm. Inside was a settlement check for his old wrongful termination case. Anonymous donation. Case reopened. He knew instantly who had done it. Tears filled his eyes. He didn't need to cash it to know the message. "I'm sorry, I'm trying to make it right." For the first time in years, Ethan felt hope. fragile, unfamiliar, but real. Winter gave way to spring. The cafe reopened with new management. Ethan hesitated at the door, unsure if she'd be there. When he saw her, apron still tied, eyes full of quiet courage, he froze. She smiled, uncertain. "Hi." He took a deep breath. "Hi." The air between them was heavy but honest. "You didn't have to fix what your father broke," he said. "I didn't do it for him," she replied softly. "I did it for you. For us." Ethan and Lena began again, not as lovers right away, but as two broken people learning to trust. They rebuilt piece by piece, shared coffee, late-night talks, laughter with Lucy. He showed her his designs again. She helped him believe in his dream. She took a second job to support a charity for unemployed workers, her quiet penance for her father's greed. Slowly, love returned, not dramatic or rushed, but patient. When Ethan finally opened his new architectural firm, Lena stood beside him at the ribbon cutting, holding Lucy's hand. "You did it," Lena whispered. "No," he thought. "We did it." That night, under the city lights, he kissed her, gently, as if promising not to let the past define them anymore. Months later, Charles Brooks appeared at Ethan's office. "You're a better man than I gave you credit for," he admitted, voice gruff. "Take care of my daughter." Ethan nodded. "I already do." As Charles left, Ethan realized forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the pain. It was about refusing to let it control you. Years later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Lucy ran into the cafe, now co-owned by Ethan and Lena. "Mom! Dad! Look, our cafe's on TV!" Ethan laughed. Lena smiled. Life had come full circle, from strangers to soulmates, from pain to peace. Their love had rewritten the past. Sometimes the greatest changes begin with the smallest kindness. A cup of coffee, a shared smile, and the courage to see someone not for where they came from, but for who they choose to become.